If you do not, well, now you consent to being recorded. If you don't consent, you can go ahead and please leave. This recording will be posted publicly. Nobody's video or chat or anything will show up other than our own. So you shouldn't have any concerns about that. The intent is to publish this relatively quickly, within a day or two after the meeting, so that everyone else who wasn't able to make it has the same access to information as everyone else. Next slide, please. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Pete. I work at FedRAMP. I'm here with two of my amazing coworkers today, and I'm really excited to pass off to them. They are going to be running you through this slide deck, through this introduction today, as well as coordinating this working group. As I've said many times over the past week, I have this incredible, amazing team of civil servants behind me that have really been putting in a lot of work and preparation for this, that were brought here specifically to help FedRAMP take a new and more modern approach to security. And we're really, really excited. I'm excited for you to get to know them a little bit and interact with them and see that there's like a really fantastic team here behind me. So I'm gonna hand it over to you, Paul.
Thank you so much, Pete. If we could hit the next slide, please. Before jumping into today's agenda, since this is an open forum, our legal team was gracious enough to provide me with a script that I'm required to read from verbatim. So here it is. I am communicating today in my official capacity on behalf of the FedRAMP Program Management Office at the General Services Administration. To ensure effective management and transparency with industry, I will be sharing information based on what I know at the present time. The information I plan to share today is provided to enhance transparency between industry and the FedRAMP PMO, but it is possible that some of the information may change at a later date because no final decisions have been made at this time. However, I think it's important to have this dialogue so we can move forward in a transparent manner, but I want you to have context before I go into the substance of this presentation. My commitment to you is to continue this dialogue and to share any new developments as soon as I can. Additionally, any reference in this conversation to any specific commercial process, product, services, or the use of any trade, firm, or corporation name is for the information and convenience of the public and does not constitute endorsement, recommendation, or favoring by GSA. That being said, let's take a second to go over the ground rules. As Pete said, there's about 590, almost 600 folks in this room, and I think there's 870 signed up. So we've turned off the ability to unmute yourselves and to chat so that we're not trying to navigate interruptions during this presentation. If during any of the future presentations you do have a speaking role, the staff will unmute you at the time you're needed to speak. This is also the first working group in a series, and I'm sure there are plenty of questions both inside and outside the scope of this working group, or for FedRAMP 20X in general. I would ask that you save those questions for the appropriate Git discussion forum, and we'll go over that in a little bit. Next slide, please. Today's goals are pretty simple in nature. It is just to provide you with an overview of the working group, introduce you to the staff at FedRAMP that will be running this particular working group, and talk through some of the changes and some of the rumors over the last few months, and discuss a general way ahead. Next slide. All right, for formal roles, I'm Paul Augusta. I'm the community mediator for this group. This working group, like the three other working groups, is intended to be community driven, but mediated by FedRAMP. My general role as the group mediator is to provide all administrative support to this forum. There is a pretty awesome team in the background that's been supporting me throughout this process and getting this set up, and will continue to support. But I will be the face of the administrative items. I'm also tasked with providing facilitation of the meetings, which includes selecting topics and briefers for subsequent meetings. A little bit of background on myself. I've been in the federal world a little over 20 years. That includes time spent in uniform in the Army as a contractor, as well as both a GS and GG government civilian. Almost all of my time in federal service has been spent in some combination of the intelligence, engineering, and cyber disciplines. From a cyber perspective, I've spent most of my time in the ISSM role on kind of the opposite end of authorization. This includes managing the overall security posture for everything from multi-tenant clouds, unmanned vehicles and platforms, and multi-intelligence platforms. Currently, I work for the FedRAMP authorizations branch, and I support authorization reviews, which we'll talk a little bit more in depth later on. And as we go to the next slide, I will pass the baton out to my co-partner.
Thanks, Paul. My name is Ryan Hodges, and I'll be the FedRAMP advocate for this working group. My role would just be to participate in discussions, answer questions related to how FedRAMP can adjust their standards and policies based on what we're learning from the working group, and to clarify our goals and objectives, and basically just participate kind of on FedRAMP's behalf in the forums. I'll also be sharing some public prototypes and sample code, stuff like that, as we develop it, as the working group continues forward, and looking forward to collaborating on developing those items. My background is most recently 10 years experience in the private sector as a data scientist and machine learning researcher. Prior to that, I have over 10 years in government as well, both in the military and the Air Force, and as a government contractor, mostly in electronic warfare and radar type systems. And I'm currently a data scientist at FedRAMP focused on our data engineering and automation efforts. I'll pass it back to Paul.
All right, thank you, Ryan. So how it will work, right? The intent of this bi-weekly meeting is to be about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on what's going on. These meetings are solely to be touch points to provide updates on progress, both within this group, the greater FedRAMP 20X community, and there's also opportunities for live demos as prototypes meet maturity. These meetings themselves are not actually intended to be utilized as the co-working space where we work on activities, gain consensus, or make decisions. The majority of engagement and work is intended to happen in the Git repo discussion forums. Myself and Ryan will work across the weeks to facilitate discussion, work through problems identified within the forum. Agenda recommendations and formulation will happen there as well. Anything brought up in the town hall, like I said, we've turned chat off for the initial meeting. I think as we get into our working groove, we'll figure out kind of where that is. But anything brought up in these town halls or meetings should also be posted on GitHub, as that is our main repository for work. Go ahead and hit the next slide, please. So before we get more into the objectives of this particular group, let's talk through some of the concerns and rumors that have been brought up, right, as we attempt to work towards a new process. First off, the Rev5 process, the current Rev5 agency-based authorization process will remain open without significant changes. This includes your annual assessments, your significant change requests as well. If you've been keeping an eye on the marketplace over the past few months, you'll notice a pretty huge spike in authorizations. We're on target to hit our 400th this week. The last few months, the overwhelming majority of the FedRAMP workforce has been dedicated to chopping down this backlog. Traditionally, a small portion of our dedicated contractor work team has worked on these reviews. Like I said, the last few months, pretty much every employee at FedRAMP, government, contractor alike, are dedicating significant portions of their days and weeks to these reviews. The other thing that we've done to kind of shift and increase the authorization throughput has been shifting our internal processes a little bit to accommodate this. Right. Previously, if you've been through the FedRAMP process, we've traditionally worked with stakeholders to get to the entirety of the authorization packet, either perfect or close to perfect prior to authorization. This approach has required multiple review meetings and took months to finalize for each cloud service provider. While our internal review is still similar under the new process, we are no longer waiting for your documentation to be 100% right before authorizing. If our review identifies deficiencies within your paperwork processes or posture, we'll start by documenting and analyzing those. If those deficiencies are considered minor or administrative in nature, we're pushing the authorization through, and you'll be provided with a timeline in your authorization memo where you'll need to remediate each of those deficiencies, have an independent assessor attest that those are fixed, and your agency acknowledges completions. If those issues are considered showstoppers in nature or we're unable to make a determination, we'll work to establish a meeting and put together a corrective action plan prior to authorization. Once the backlog is cleared, the PMO will continue to process Rev5 agency authorizations based on demand. The assessments and materials included in the Rev5 agency authorization shall be presumed adequate for agency reuse. of that FedRAMP authorization. That process is not changing. Rev5 agency authorizations will remain the only active path to FedRAMP authorization until other paths are finalized and the community has moved on to something better. The agency authorization is expected to clear. The agency authorization backlog is expected to be cleared by the end of April. Huge shout out to our contracted public servants who've been supporting that for many years and have really put a lot of effort into these processes. What is changing though is the way we support some of the greater continuing monitoring efforts. We will no longer be centralizing continuing monitoring efforts, and any portions of reviews and analysis we have historically supported in that, right, will transition over to the appropriate parties. If you have any questions about Rev5 processes, please email info@FedRAMP.gov. You can find that email address all over our website. Next slide, please. All right, the working group objectives. There are 4 working groups being established as part of FedRAMP 20X. While 3 of the 4 are dedicated to the next major iteration of FedRAMP, this group is focused on legacy processes. The 3 main objectives of this working group are: 1, understanding preferred pathways for transitioning current FedRAMP managed continuous monitoring activities, right? We're shifting our posture and only focusing on providing those services that meet our statutory obligations. For the past few years, we've been providing additional continuous monitoring activities for certain agencies and joint processes. We will not have the manpower to continue to support these activities, and we'll work with the community and those affected to gracefully sundown or transition those. The second objective is to share best practices and lessons learned within continuing monitoring across the community. There are almost 400 authorized services in the marketplace today. We should hit that goal at the end of this week. While the baseline requirements are standardized across those services, the implementation of the how across customers vary, right? Some CSPs have expertly navigated huge multi-agency continuous monitoring programs, and some have turned to unique dashboards, right? This is an opportunity for us as a community to share what has worked and what hasn't. And lastly, this form will be utilized to keep folks abreast of pending changes in the FedRAMP authorization process. While we have listed a target audience, note that this is this form is open to the public. It is not limited to any of the groups identified. We are not checking IDs at the door. You should ensure that anything you share within this form, regardless of venue, is able to be shared with the general public. Next slide, please. All right. Next, let's talk our initial cadence. Our initial cadence for all the working groups will be every other week. We may adjust this cadence, and it may be working group specific as the working groups mature based on need and participation. Prior to kicking this meeting off today, we actually staged a few discussion posts around navigating multi-agency continuous monitoring. There was a discussion around prototyping a metrics-based approach to continuous monitoring over time, as well as current Rev5 process improvements in our Git repo. We're going to take a minute here to transition there virtually. We realize not everyone has experience in Git, nor does everyone know how to get to our individual forums. So if you give us a second here, we're going to transition presenters to Ryan, and he will walk through going from our FedRAMP.gov website, navigating to the individual community in the Git repo. So over to you, Ryan.
Thanks, Paul. Here, let me share my window real quick. All right. Can you guys see FedRAMP.gov open?
Yes, sir.
All right. So yeah, if you navigate to FedRAMP.gov, you can see right here, right front main page, FedRAMP 20X Community Working Groups. And if you click on Participate, it has all of the 4 working groups listed and how to register. Of course, we are the Rev5 Continuous Monitoring Working Group. So if you click on that guy, here is where you likely registered for this meeting today, and where I assume future registrations for future meetings will be here as well. And then here you can find us on GitHub, the very second link. Click on the GitHub, Rev5 Continuous Monitoring Community Working Group. And then if you go to the discussions, You can see it looks like we've already got some activity here for the Q&A. We have a couple of kind of questions that we've thrown out there about the current Kanban process improvement, just an introduction, introduce yourself, and so please participate. We're looking forward to it. I look forward to engaging with everyone on this forum. And I'll kick it back to you, Paul. I'm not sure if there's anything else we need to show.
No, Ryan, I think that's perfect. Thank you.
All right.
Like I said, the intent is to get the all of the questions and answering, not in this, not in chat itself, right, but in the actual GitHub forum. Like I said, the majority work is intended to be done out of the GitHub repo. So we do not plan on taking Q&A after this. We will do that in the actual Git repo itself. So if you do have questions post this meeting, like I said, it is intended to be community driven, right? So if there is a question that you know the answer to, please feel free to address it. If not, the PMO will go through at a regular cadence and address the questions as they arise and as we're able to. Outside of that, I just want to say thank you guys and girls for coming today. I appreciate it. There's a lot of folks here. Pete, any parting words before we adjourn this?
We still have people coming into the meeting here. So I think since we went through this really fast, I think something that would be actually kind of fun to do would be to spend a moment to talk through some of the Q&A that's happening right now in the discussion forums on GitHub. So I was wondering if maybe I can share my screen. Let's see if I can share the right screen. All right. So I want to show this as an example of how we intend to collaborate and work with everyone. As we do these meetings with 659 people here, the intent is we don't want anyone to miss out on the opportunity to ask questions or have answers to questions because they didn't come to this meeting. So typically on a bi-weekly basis, as discussed earlier, this meeting will be reading out kind of summaries and FedRAMP's perspectives and FedRAMP's lessons learned throughout the last 2 weeks. We intend to, beyond that, very much focus on discussion and Q&A in GitHub. We want this to be a living record of communication and questions. So you can see throughout this page here during the meeting, people have been asking questions and we have been replying to it and encouraging discussion. We encourage you all to reply to discussions as well. There's a question here about whether or not you can start your own discussion threads or only reply to us. We strongly recommend that you start your own discussion threads and have a engaged community where we all talk to each other. This is not intended to be just for us. This is intended to be for everyone to have fair and equal access to information. So like, for example, a question here from CyberSecHawk, will small to medium-sized businesses have an equal voice as the hyperscalers? And somebody already replied for me, there is certainly equal access to the forums. And theoretically, I can reply to this and say, exactly. So this is the type of interaction to look for. You see people commenting with maintainers, that will be a member of my team, and you'll know that it's an official answer. So rather than have everyone just sit around and watch us go through and answer questions one by one for the rest of the meeting, what I would recommend is you spend some time, you got an extra 8 minutes that we're about to give you back, spend some time reading up on the repo, reading up on GitHub, signing up for it if you don't have it, and posting your Q&A there and reading the Q&A. And my team will dig in and make sure that everybody gets an answer. All right. And this is how these groups will work from here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the threads that have already been seeded by the team, as well as any other thoughts related to this you might wish to share. I would finally just again emphasize there are 4 community working groups. The one today, this working group is explicitly focused on Rev5 continuous monitoring. So questions related to other topics such as future authorizations, et cetera, should either go into the appropriate working group or sent to info@FedRAMP.gov. To the greatest extent possible, we'd like to be working in public. So there should be a working group for almost anywhere to ask those questions. With that, we'll close off and see you all later. Thank you so much.